마크 램버트 미 국무부 부차관보님께서는 사실은 지금 굉장히 많은 출장과 이런 것으로 인해서 지금 몸이 개인적으로 좀 안 좋은 상태인데, 원래는 이제 사무실에서 줌 저희들 오늘 포럼을 하도록 되어 있는데, 여러 가지 개인적으로 지금 몸이 안 좋으셔서 집에서 오늘 포럼을 진행하게 되었습니다. 이 점을 양해해 주시고 특별히 감사드리겠습니다. 오늘 포럼은 한반도는 물론 인도 태평양 지역과 전 세계에서 불안정성과 그리고 불가측성이 심화되는 가운데 2022년 한미동맹을 전망해보고 도전 과제가 무엇인지, 또 이를 한미가 동맹으로서 어떻게 함께 해나갈 것인지를 논의하는 중요한 자리라고 생각합니다. 이러한 의미에서 마크 램버트 부차관보의 발표는 한미동맹의 방향성을 설정하는 데 많은 해안과 시사점을 줄 것으로 확신합니다. 다시 한번 우리 램버트 부차관보님께 친구로서 깊은 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 오늘 행사는 정승조 한미동맹재단 회장 및 빈센트 브룩스 주한미군 전후회 회장의 환영사에 이어서 초청연설 그리고 질의응답 순으로 진행하겠습니다. 그럼 먼저 정승조 한미동맹재단 회장의 환영사가 있겠습니다.
Thank you, General Shin. Good morning and good evening. Summer, good afternoon. Mr. Lambert, thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedule to share your thoughts with us about the Rok and Us Alliance. I know how difficult it was for you today to make this happen. Thank you. 지금 한국은 이른 아침 시간입니다. 미국 동부는 아마도 일과 후 저녁 시간이고, 여기 미국 서부 또 유럽, 하와이 각각 다른 시간대일 텐데, 이 어려운 조건에서 오늘 이렇게 화상회의에 참여해 주신 여러 신사숙녀 여러분, 대한민국의 안보에 대한 여러분들의 열정에 관심과 열정에 감사를 드리면서 여러분 모두 환영합니다. 한미동맹재단의 기부자 및 기부단체의 대표님들, 고문, 자문위원님과 이사님들, 항상 드리는 말씀이지만 여러분들은 애국심을 행동으로 실천하시는 분들입니다. 존경과 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 브룩스 장군을 비롯한 주한미군 전후회 회원 여러분, 대한민국 방어를 위한 여러분의 헌신에 감사를 드리고 오늘 화상회의에 참여해 주신 것을 환영합니다. General Brooks, thank you for joining us today from Texas. 신사숙녀 여러분, 지금 세계 정세가 심상치 않습니다. 러시아의 우크라이나 침공이 임박한 것으로 보이고, 이에 대한 미국과 서방 세계의 대응도 평상시와는 다른 양상입니다. 대만 해협에서 벌어지고 있는 중국의 활발한 군사활동은 동아시아 지역의 안정을 심각하게 위협하고 있습니다. 그런데 이러한 현상들은 우리가 무시하고 넘어갈 수 있는 남의 집 일이 아닙니다. 결코 강 건너 불구경하듯 넘길 수 없습니다. 우리 대한민국의 안보에 직접적 영향을 주기 때문입니다. 북한은 금년 들어 어느 때보다도 왕성하게 미사일 실험을 하고 있고, 아마도 이러한 전략적 작전적 도발은 계속될 것으로 예측됩니다. 미국이 북한 이외의 다른 지역에 관심을 가질 수밖에 없는 이러한 때 더욱더 한미동맹을 난처하게 하는 도발을 해올 것으로 보입니다. 특히 대한민국의 대통령 선거가 있는 시기에 더욱더 교활한 도발이 있을 수 있습니다. 더욱더 강한 한미동맹 체제가 요구됩니다. 이러한 시기에 오늘 램버트 부차관보의 강연을 듣는 것은 매우 시기적절하고 의미 있는 일이라고 생각합니다. 다시 한번 오늘 강연을 흔쾌히 수락해 주신 램버트 부차관보님께 깊은 감사를 드립니다. 오늘의 강연이 모든 분들에게 유익한 강연이 되기를 바랍니다. Thank you very much. We go together.
네, 감사합니다. 네, 그 박수는 소리가 안 들리기 때문에 화면에서 이렇게 쳐주시면 감사하겠습니다. 다음은 빈센트 브룩스 주한미군 전후회 회장님의 환영사가 있겠습니다.
Thank you very much, General Shin, for the introduction, and also thank you for moderating today. You carry a heavy load for the Alliance, and certainly we appreciate that very, very much. To all of you, 새해 복 많이 받으세요, and Happy New Year to each and every one of you. I hope that even under the circumstances of COVID, that you're able to spend some time with your families and have had an enjoyable New Year, 2 New Years, as we certainly reference. Our reach tonight goes from Austria to Korea. That's quite a reach, especially as you track around the world from east to west. That's quite a bit of coverage, and it says a lot about the nature of this alliance, that there are extensions of this alliance everywhere. Let me begin by thanking my colleague and good friend, the president of Korea-U.S. Alliance Foundation, General Jung Sung-jo, for his leadership, and for KUSAF leading the efforts for this 11th Alliance Forum. General Jung, thanks for your leadership as always, and thanks for your great support and teamwork. To the board members of KUSAF, we thank you for your support at KDVA. And to the board members of KDVA and the advisory council members who are also on the net tonight, thank you so much for joining with us for this event. I don't want to make remarks very long because we've had a late start, and we really want to hear from Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Mark Lambert. And so I want to thank him up front as well for putting forth truly an extra effort, going above and beyond, even feeling ill, but you care enough about this alliance and about these organizations to make this extra effort. So Mark, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. We can always count on you, not just for events like this, but we can count on you carrying the heavy load of keeping the alliance together and strong. You know, as General Jung said, there are many, many things going on right now, as is always the case for the Korea-U.S. Alliance. The elections that are coming up here in a matter of weeks, very important for the direction of the Republic of Korea. And as one of the two key pillars of the alliance, it will be very important to all of us to watch this outcome. Democracy is in full display, as has been the case through the campaign season. And that's actually a good thing. As chaotic as it can be, it's an expression of what makes this alliance different from other parts of the world. This is two democracies, two countries who are free market economies, two countries who stand in the face of North Korean threats, two countries who together form a linchpin. This is a very important alliance, and we watch very closely to see the democracy unfold in South Korea. As we know, the region continues to be challenging, uncertain, whether it's North Korean provocations or the other matters that General Jung talked about. This is the time for a strong alliance, and that remains the case. So I trust that all of our efforts will continue to redouble down on making this alliance as strong as possible. We have to remain engaged and remain interested and remain helpful to one another, maintaining a good dialogue like this event will create. So thank you all once again for joining us, and we're honored at the KDVA to be a part of this event. 감사합니다. 같이 갑시다.
감사합니다. 지금 두 분 회장님 말씀에 감사드리고, 지금부터는 그 상태는 별로 안 좋은 것 같이 보이지만은 우리 마크 램버트 부차관보님께 좋은 말씀을 부탁드리겠습니다. Mark.
Very good. Hello, I'm Mark Lambert, and I'm very grateful for your patience today. I had some technical difficulties, but thanks to cooperation from our Korean friends, I was able to work them out. I presently serve as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands at the U.S. State Department. And while I regret I cannot be there with you today in person, I am grateful for having the opportunity to share some views. There's been so much going on here recently, but I'd also like in particular to thank both the Korea Defense Veterans Association Chairman, General Vincent Brooks, and the Korea United States Alliance Foundation President, General Jung Sung-jo, for organizing this year's event. Hopefully next year, we're all in person again. Now, before I talk today about the US Rok Alliance, let's take a few minutes to talk about how the State Department is viewing the broader Indo-Pacific. I just got back this morning from Hawaii, and there's been so much going on. I think it's worth our time a little bit to reflect on that. We all know, if we're involved in these two organizations, about the strategic and economic importance of the Indo-Pacific region. This past week, Secretary Blinken began his week joining a foreign ministerial in Melbourne, Australia, that brought together his counterparts from Australia, India, the United States, and Japan, where they discussed the arrangements under the Quad. Now, the Quad is not a military organization. It is a more focused on economic and common security issues. But I think it's significant that even while the world is watching so closely events in and around the Ukraine, that President Biden dispatched his top foreign policy advisor to the Indo-Pacific. And I hope that that sends the message of just how seriously we take the region. After Secretary Blinken was in Melbourne, he went on to Suva, Fiji. This was the first visit by an American Secretary of State to Fiji since 1985. This was important both for practical reasons and for symbolic reasons. There is a lot of concern that the United States is not focused on these Pacific island nations the way we should be. So by dispatching the President of the United States' top foreign policy advisor in person to Suva, where he met with the leaders of a dozen Pacific Island countries, in addition to rolling out our new Indo-Pacific strategy, hopefully that signals that in addition to our alliances in East Asia and in Southeast Asia, we will continue to be focused on the Oceania region. But it didn't stop there, because after he met with leaders in Fiji, he flew to Hawaii, and that's where I was. While in Hawaii, he had a bilateral meeting with Republic of Korea Foreign Minister Chung, and a trilateral meeting with Foreign Minister Chung and Japanese Foreign Minister Hayashi. It's significant that for the first time in 4 years, despite the present situation in the world, we were able to put together a very strong and hard-hitting joint statement among our three countries. I would urge you to take a look at that statement. You can find it on the State Department's webpage, but it lays out the complexities that the democracies, our three democracies face, and what we must do together to overcome them. Before Secretary Blinken had his meetings with his foreign minister counterparts, our good friend Sung Kim, former ambassador to Korea, presently our ambassador to Jakarta, and the president's representative for DPRK affairs, met with both his Japanese and Korean counterparts to, again, just the latest of a series of engagements we have had to talk about this, the situation on the Korean Peninsula. As you know, the president has underscored the United States is a Pacific country. President Biden has worked intensively to restore American leadership in the Indo-Pacific region and to adapt its role for the 21st century. During the course of the last year, the United States has modernized its long-standing alliances, both with Korea, Japan, Australia, and others, strengthened emerging partnerships with a wide range of countries, and forged innovative links among them to meet urgent challenges from competition with China to climate change to dealing with the COVID pandemic. These efforts come at a time when other countries and partners around the world, ranging from the United Kingdom and France to Germany and the nations of Latin America, are increasingly expanding their own engagement in this region. This convergence is a commitment to the region across oceans and reflects an undeniable reality that the Indo-Pacific is the most dynamic region on our planet. Its future affects people everywhere, every continent. That reality is the basis of the president's Indo-Pacific strategy that was finally unveiled just 3 days ago. President Biden's vision more firmly anchors the United States in the Indo-Pacific and strengthens the region in the process. I'd like to outline that it has 5 key components. First, an emphasis on free and open. Our vital interests and those of our closest partners require a free and open Indo-Pacific. And a free and open Indo-Pacific requires that governments can make their own choices and that shared domains are governed lawfully. Our Indo-Pacific strategy begins with strengthening resilience, both within individual countries in the region, as we have done in our own country, but also among them. The second key element is being connected. A free and open Indo-Pacific can only be achieved if we build collective capacity for a new age. The alliances and organizations and rules that the United States and its partners like Korea have helped to build must be adapted to meet new challenges. We're dealing with climate change. We're dealing with AI threats. We're dealing with new technologies that will shape the way governments interact with their citizens. And we must work together to shape those. The third component is prosperous. The prosperity of everyday Americans is linked directly to the Indo-Pacific. That fact requires investments to encourage innovation, strengthen economic competitiveness, produce good-paying jobs, rebuild supply chains, and expand economic opportunities for middle-class families. 1.5 billion people in the Indo-Pacific will join the global middle class this decade. It's something that has never happened in all of human history. The fourth component is security. For 75 years, the United States has maintained a strong and consistent area to support regional peace, security, stability, and prosperity. We are extending and we are modernizing that role, enhancing our capabilities to defend our interests and to deter against U.S. territory, but also against our allies and our partners. And finally, the fifth component, we must be resilient. The Indo-Pacific faces major transnational challenges. Climate change is growing ever more severe as South Asia's glaciers melt and the Pacific Islands battle existential rises in sea levels. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to inflict a painful human and economic toll across the region. Indo-Pacific government disasters, resource scarcity, internal conflict, and governance challenges. Left unchecked, these forces threaten to destabilize the region. These 5 goals for the Indo-Pacific: free and open, connected, prosperous, and resilient, all have one unifying thread. They will require close cooperation with most important allies in the region if we're going to achieve them. And no alliance is more important than the United States alliance with the Republic of Korea. So within this context, I want to talk about the Us Rok Alliance. Our commitment to defense of the Republic of Korea is, and always will be, ironclad. We are absolutely mutually committed to working together and with our allies and partners to realize the vision for the Pacific. But our partner with the Republic of Korea goes well beyond security. What began as a military alliance many decades ago has grown and blossomed to a comprehensive partnership. Our 2 countries are bound together by our common security interests, by our economic ties, by our common values of democracy and freedom, but above all, by our enduring friendship. And the depth of that friendship has been on full display since President Biden took office a year ago. Secretary Blinken and Secretary of Defense Austin visited Seoul last March during their first overseas trip. President Biden, President Moon, and he was only the second head of state to visit the White House during this administration. We've also seen Deputy Secretary of State Sherman and many other high-ranking officials visit Seoul despite the COVID pandemic, and numerous ROK ministers have visited Washington. Of course, as I mentioned just 3 days ago, Secretary Blinken met Foreign Minister Chung and hosted trilateral with the Japanese in Honolulu. All of this activity, which is almost unprecedented, is in pursuit of our shared goals, not only for the Korean Peninsula, but for the region and for the world. We're working together to defend and promote the rules-based international order and address regional and global challenges. Key to that is ensuring the foundation of the relationship, our military alliance. It must remain strong. And in order to achieve this, we're focused on three primary lines of effort. The first is to expand the alliance and develop an even more sophisticated security relationship. You know, those problems I mentioned before, artificial intelligence, stealthier weapon systems, they will require us to work more closely together. For decades, the alliance has fulfilled its goal of protecting the ROK's independence and sovereignty, while also keeping the peace on the Korean Peninsula. While this is still the primary concern, we want to further afield. I think this is an exciting area. Since Korea has deployed to the Horn of Africa, since Korea has stood up so many peacekeeping efforts under the United Nations flag, and since Korea has worked with us and others in building maritime domain awareness in Southeast Asia and is now looking at Africa and elsewhere, this is an area we'll be working at more. This also includes the need to work with Japan and encouraging cooperation with ASEAN and with others. So I'd urge you to look at that trilateral joint statement we find it on the State Department webpage. It outlines a series of things that we believe are important trilaterally for the Republic of Korea, the United States, and Japan to work on. Finally, we will continue to focus on readiness and deterrence. This means being able to conduct robust exercises with each other and ensuring that our two militaries have the capabilities they need to defend the Republic of Korea and our interests. Good news here that our alliance is very strong. Our ironclad commitment to the defense of the Republic of Korea is based on a deep sense of shared commitment between our two countries, as well as our shared values of human rights, democratic ideals, and people-to-people ties. Our commitment and these deep ties were all reaffirmed when we saw President Moon come to the White House last May. At the same time, we can't deny that there are challenges. Certain countries are actively trying to undermine, destabilize, or threaten the rules-based international order. We speak with one voice in opposition to that behavior, while at the same time prioritizing efforts that make peace and stability, lawful unimpeded commerce, and respect for international law. President put diplomacy at the center of our foreign policy. That means leading with our allies and partners. As strong as America is on its own, we are so much stronger when we stand shoulder to shoulder with allies who share our values and our vision for a free, peaceful, and secure world. The Republic of Korea is just such an ally, a partner, and a true friend to the United States. And I'm confident that there is no challenge so great that our two countries working together cannot overcome it. So thank you again for giving me the opportunity to share some views here tonight. As is usually the case, I think the more interesting conversation will be having an opportunity to answer your questions. So with that, I'll turn it back to our moderator and to your questions.
네, 감사합니다. 매우 유의미한 좋은 말씀을 해주신 것 같습니다. 마크 램버트 부차관보는 한반도 그리고 동아시아에 대해 그 누구보다 높은 식견과 경험을 갖고 있는 공직자요 또 전문가입니다. 오늘의 연설은 이를 다시 한번 입증했다고 생각합니다. 이제 질의응답 시간을 갖고자 합니다. 먼저 사회자로서 전통에 따라 첫 번째 질문을 하도록 하겠습니다. 가급적이면 우리 램버트 부차관보에게 좀 쉬운 질문을 하도록 하겠습니다. 북한은 올해도 대화에는 나오지 않고 있습니다. 그러면서 미사일 도발만을 지속하고 있는 상황입니다. 남북관계 개선과 그리고 북한 비핵화 협상을 아주 어렵게 만들고 있다고 생각합니다. 미국에서도 추가적인 제재의 필요성이 언급되고 있는 것으로 알고 있고 또 압박을 보다 강화해야 한다는 의견도 많습니다. 올해 북한 비핵화 협상 전망 그리고 방향에 대해서 부차관보의 생각을 듣고 싶습니다. Okay, Lambert, would you answer my question? Did you hear that?
I heard it in Korean. I haven't heard it in English. I don't think I looked up the translation.
그러면 간단하게 다시 한번 질문을 반복하도록 하겠습니다. 북한이 지금 대화에는 나오지 않고 미사일 도발을 지속하고 있는 상황이고 이러한 상황은 남북관계 개선 그리고 북한 비핵화 협상을 어렵게 만들고 있다고 생각합니다. 미 측에서도 추가적인 제재의 필요성이 언급되고 있고 또 많은 분들이 압박을 보다 강화해야 되는 것이 아니냐는 의견도 있습니다. 올해 북한 비핵화 협상 전망 그리고 방향에 대해서 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Again, I'm not hearing the translation.
지금 버튼을 통역 버튼을 누르셨습니까? 영어로 선택을 하셨는지요?
통역 버튼을 안 누르셨으면 지금 신장군 그 말씀을 못 들었을 수 있어요. 그러니까 영어로 언어 선택하는 걸 한번 다시 설명을 해주는 게 좋겠네. Mark,
Yes.
Did you push that language button on your bottom screen?
Yes, I've tried. I'm here, and again, bear with me. I'm reminding me of my father at how technologically challenged I am. I am. There's just. I see. I'm very sorry. I can't see very well right now, and I just. So.
If you see that your screen.
Language interpretation. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, I think I've got it set. Okay, ask me a question.
저희 여기 있는 모든 시청자께 다 들으셨기 때문에 질문 그만 하겠습니다. 그래서 질문 내용은 북한의 비핵화 협상 전망 그리고 방향에 대해서 말씀을 해주셨으면 좋겠습니다.
Well, again, this is probably the most difficult issue in the relationship. I would say that we're anticipating some big breakthrough. The positive news is that every time that there's been a recent provocation, we've immediately gotten together with each other and then also with our Japanese partners to share our analysis and understanding. We have sought to work with other countries to press the DPRK back to the table. And again, we've continually made clear our willingness, we have no hostile intent towards the DPRK. We continue to remain willing to engage with the North Koreans. Thus far, they've just shown no willingness to respond.
네, 감사합니다. 그러면은 이제 저희들 지정 토론자 두 분께서 계셔서 그분들께 먼저 질문을 할 수 있는 기회를 드리도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 유명한 재단 이사장님께서 질문과 함께 코멘트를 하시겠습니다.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lambert, for your kind presentation. Rather than asking you a direct question, let me first make a brief comment. As you know that, Korea will have a presidential election next month, and the new president will have to navigate the uncharted sea for the next 5 years. And I believe Korea is at a crossroad, and the next election is very crucial for the future of Korea. Well, my comment is this time is, as you know, Ukraine crisis is reminding us that national security cannot be guaranteed by only words and promises in front of geopolitical reality. And any nation who wants to enjoy the sovereignty must maintain self-defense capability and join a multilateral security and economic framework. In this sense, it's my strong wish that Korea should join an Indo-Pacific regional multilateral security and economic mechanism on top of a strong bilateral alliance relationship with the United States. Korea cannot afford to risk falling behind while the center of gravity of regional cooperation moves to Japan and Quad. And I believe one of the most urgent tasks for a new government in Korea will be fence mending, effort with Japan and normalize trilateral cooperation mechanism, including the United States, as was shown in Hawaii trilateral meeting last week. And my question is there any way for the United States to step in more directly so that both Japan and Korea can normalize relations as soon as possible after the election, presidential election in South Korea next month?
Well,
if you have any comment.
There's a lot of wisdom in what you say. Let's face it, that despite the importance of the Indo-Pacific region, unlike in Latin America, where there's the Organization of American States, or in Africa, where there's the African Union, or in Europe, where it's the European Union or NATO, the part of the world that we work on doesn't have these structures together. And I think it's a laudable aspiration to try to create them. One thing, though, that both Korea and the United States, and for that matter, Japan and Australia and others, all agree is the centrality of ASEAN. So I think continuing to help those 10 countries to develop strong mechanisms like the EAS and others and participate in the ASEAN Regional Forum, that's a good start. To get to your other question about the bilateral relationship between Japan and Korea, I agree. I'll be frank, my country is less secure when our two dear allies, the Republic of Korea and Japan, are not cooperating as fully as they can. I think that there are smart people in both Seoul and Tokyo who share that concern. So I think, there's going to be a new election in Korea on March 10th. There'll be a 2-month period before the new president of Korea takes office. I think it's very important during that 2-month period that we develop a relationship with the new president's security policies and urge our Japanese friends to do that well. But let me also emphasize that the days when the United States could sort of push people together or press people to do things just because we wanted them to do them, they're long gone. And actually, it's more appropriate that they're long gone. This is time to work together and emphasize our shared common interests. And finally, about with things like the AUKUS or things like the Quad that create isolated and left alone. I don't think that's going to happen. You know, look at your country. You're a G20 economy. You have one of the most capable militaries in the region, if not the world. You're playing a role on the global stage that dwarfs most countries' role. You're going to be playing a bigger role. For my country's sake, we're experimenting with a number of multilateral mechanisms. Some of these may work, some of these may not work. And I think we would welcome doing more things with key partners that include the Republic of Korea. You know, we have a good relationship already in the infancy of the Republic of Korea and Australia and the United States. I too share your hope that Japan and the Republic have better ally talks. But let's look further, the Pacific Island groupings, ASEAN. And I would love to see doing more with our European friends. I've talked with Korean colleagues about now that Europe looks at East Asia with a keener eye, there's utility in Koreans and Americans going to Brussels and briefing Europeans in NATO and the EU and sharing with them their views in part of the world, but also the opportunities.
네,
Thank you very much.
감사합니다. 네, 다음은 안호영 전 주미대사님께 두 분 지정 토론하실 수 있는 기회를 드리겠습니다.
Thank you, General Shin. Before I go any further, could I call upon General Chung Seung-jo and General Brooks and General Shin to turn off your microphone, because I think there is some echoing. So if you could turn off your microphone, it may help. General Chung, General Brooks, and General Shin, could you turn off your microphone, please? General Shin, can you hear me?
예, 전 마이크를 쓰기 때문에 제 폰을 항상 제가 얘기할 때만 켜고 있습니다.
Okay. Well, Mark, well, thank you so much for taking time with us. And I have to tell you, I ran into you at Dulles Airport last December. And I have to tell you, it was something I would call pleasant surprise. And I very much hope that we are at the start of a new year. And I very much hope that the new year will be full of well, equally pleasant surprises in the days to come. So I wish to make 2 points. The first point is with respect to what you said about security architecture in Asia Pacific. And you just said, well, security architecture in Asia Pacific is different from NATO, it's different from other parts of the world, in the sense that what you have is just hub and spoke collection of bilateral security arrangements in Asia and Pacific. But at the same time, if there is something well, closest to NATO in Asia Pacific, I think there is Korea, US, Japan alliance. That I think would be something closest to what you have in Europe, in NATO. So in that sense, I should be thanking you as well as Secretary Tony Blinken for organizing that trilateral meeting in Hawaii just several days ago. So that is my first point, which in fact should be further utilized in the days to come. My second point is about deterrence. So the first question coming from General Shin, it was about, say, diplomacy, but at the same time, another side of diplomacy would be deterrence. And I have to tell you, in the sense that, of course, you have a vast domain of responsibility with you. But at the same time, if there is one issue I very much wish to raise to your attention at this particular timing would be the importance of deterrence. Why do I say that? It's because, well, entering this year alone, that North Korea conducted no less than 7 missile tests. And 6 out of those 7 missile tests, they were for short-range missiles.
Yeah.
What does it tell us? Well, people say they, in fact, find it, surprising, but at the same time, in a sense, North Korea is implementing what it promised to do. In January last year, 2021, North Korea had 8th Party Congress, and one of the things which North Korea declared at the 8th Party Congress was, we will make use of tactical nuclear weapons. Tactical nuclear weapons, that's what North Korea promised, declared to the world it was planning to do in January last year through the 8th Party Congress. And these repeated tests of short-range missiles, I think they are, well, in a sense, clear indications that North Korea, it is not only declaring its intention, it in fact is closely implementing what it promised to do. That is to say, develop, perfect, and deploy tactical nuclear weapons. So Mark, last year, there was an SMC, and then you came to attend the SMC, and then I recall there was strategic guidance issued at that SMC meeting, which was how to deal with this increasing nuclear threat arising from North Korea. And I very much hope that when you come up with that strategic guidance, I very much hope that we could include some specific ideas how to deal with this North Korean plan to develop and deploy tactical nuclear weapons. Thank you so much.
Ambassador On, it is always a pleasure to see you and hear from you. And I learned so much from you when you served as Korea's ambassador in Washington. And it's a real role model for what life after service can be. So thank you for sharing your wisdom. I agree with you. There is a tendency of saying, well, it could be worse. The simple fact of the matter is UN Security Council resolutions with every one of these missile tests, and they are becoming more capable. And some of the things that they've said in their party documents and speeches extremely worrisome. Seriously, we have to keep pressing at the door for diplomacy. All of us are concerned. We recognize COVID probably plays something with their reluctance to engage, but we have to keep working that. But at the same time, we have to be prepared to counter a threat. That threat still exists, and they honor their force. We have to be ready in response. So I agree with much of what you said.
네, 감사드립니다. 지금 이제 화면으로 등장하신 분들에게 질문 기회를 드리기 전에 저희 채팅창으로 들어온 질문들이 있어서 이것을 먼저 질문을 하도록 하겠습니다. 영어로 질문이 들어왔기 때문에 제가 그 질문 내용을 그대로 읽어드리도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 줌으로 참석하신 분들 가운데 질문을 하시고 싶으신 분들은 화면에서 손들기 기능을 사용하시면 되겠습니다. 질문은 요 첫 번째 질문, 2개의 질문을 제가 드리도록 하겠습니다. 채팅창에 올라와 있는 질문입니다. 첫 번째 질문은 지금 동일한 질문들이 여러 개가 있어서 첫 번째 질문을 여러분들이 동일한 질문을 해주셨다는 것을 말씀드리면서 질문을 읽도록 하겠습니다. Does the U.S. consider any role of South Korea and Japan as U.S. allies should the standoff over Ukraine escalate into a full-blown war? we have the some questions about this one. And the second question is that the Indo-Pacific Action Plan includes the expansion of trilateral cooperation with South Korea and Japan as core goals to be pursued in the next 12 to 24 months. Is it an effort to formalize cooperation into a more robust security architecture to counter China and North Korean threat? Those are the two questions.
Ukraine, the situation in Ukraine was a key topic of discussion in Honolulu. If you saw the joint press conference after that, if you read the trilateral statement that came out of it, it made very clear that all three foreign ministers called out our shared concern that Ukraine be respected, that the situation be resolved peacefully, and that Russia stop its provocative behavior. You've seen announcements that a number of countries have made offering assistance to Europe, but also making it clear that if Russia does something unwise, there will be economic consequences. I would leave to the leadership at Blue House, the leadership of the specific things the Republic of Korea or the government of Japan wishes to do in response to something that we're all hoping doesn't take place. But I'm also hoping that in the Kremlin, President Putin is looking very carefully and recognize, if you look at the ledger of countries that have made it very clear that there will be consequences, that's important. I think it's important that that just as Asia is looking, just as I mentioned previously, as Europe is looking at its economic and security interests in Asia, it's also important that the countries of Asia make it clear to Europe that countries like Korea, countries like Japan are looking what happens in Europe and how it affects the economic prosperity and security of this region. The world is so intertwined, and the days of when a country or a leader can go off and think that, well, most of the planet won't pay attention to this, I think are over. Your other question about can we work together and have more formal arrangements with Japan and Korea on security issues, I think there are things we can do. I mean, we've already got GSOMIA, we've already got a number of technical exchanges. Anytime there's a ballistic missile test coming from the DPRK, very quickly we get together and talk about our analysis of that. That's important, but you have to build on a layer of trust. And I think we should all collectively, both those of us in government, but those of you who have previous government experience, and also smart people from academia, should be looking at things that we can do together to enhance trust and enhance cooperation. I'm fairly optimistic. You know, I look at Korea's new Southern strategy that focuses on the countries of ASEAN, plus Korea's focus on the Pacific Islands, and I see it dovetails exactly with what we're trying to do in our Indo-Pacific strategy and what I think the Japanese are doing in the free open Pacific. We would like to see these countries more resilient, more able to face all sorts of challenges, and to be stronger economically. That gives many opportunities for us to work together and to perhaps create what the author suggested is a more formal relationship among us.
네, 감사합니다. 다음은 이제 저희 줌 참석자들에게 질문하실 수 있는 기회를 드리겠습니다. 먼저 이서영 주한미군 전후의 코리아 챕터 회장입니다.
General Shin, thank you. Mark, thank you very much for your excellent speech this morning. Even right after traveling in Hawaii, I think it was very successful meeting, especially in terms of the trilateral cooperation and against North Korea threat. I agree with your opinion for Korea's role should be expanded, not only just Korean Peninsula, but also regional and global issues as the 10th largest economic power in the world. I have a couple of questions on the military perspective. As you know, the CMA, Comprehensive Military Agreement, was signed for fundamental purpose of that was the denuclearization of North Korea. But as Ambassador said, North Korea is increasing their capability, nuclear and missile capability. They tested 7 times in January even. Also this morning, I read the newspaper, the Stimson Center researcher, former IAEA Deputy Secretary General Olli Heinonen said, Yongbyon nuclear facilities looks like operating. We found some indication, he said. So North Korea doesn't have will to give up the nuclear weapon or denuclearization. I think it's time we should reinforce our military capability against North Korea missile and nuclear. In addition to diplomatic effort. So I think it's time to conduct military exercise, combined military exercise between the ROK and US, just like before the CMA. Not only just the CPX, but also field training exercise. Also, we should reinforce against North Korean missile threat as well as nuclear threat. Deploy the deterrence options such as strategic assets. What is your opinion on this? Thank you.
First of all, let me start with, I need to be respectful for my colleagues who do work on North Korea. And back in a close friend of mine, he's a former boss of mine. I had dinner with him in Honolulu, and I know he is working on this issue hard. In a similar fashion, Dr. Jung Pak, also a Deputy Assistant Secretary of State here in Washington, she is Sung's deputy, and she is extremely capable in her own right on this issue. You raise some extremely complex issues and some extremely sensitive topics. We're treaty allies, and I think we should talk about everything. But at the end of the day, we have to remember what our goal is. Our goal is a peaceful resolution of this problem. I did work on DPRK issues in 2017, and I don't think anyone wants to return to that type of an atmosphere. So I am confident moving forward that our two governments and experts in our two governments will continue to deeply share views on the DPRK situation and what is the wisest course to approach it.
네, 답변 감사드립니다. 다음은 우리 김종훈 한미동맹재단 이사님께서 질문해 주시겠습니다.
Thank you very much, General Shin, and I thank very much Mr. Lambert for your remarks and insights. Well, I do believe that Quad is the pillar of Indo-Pacific policy of the United States. And if my observation is right, the incumbent Korean administration looks to be a little bit reluctant, or I may say shy, in joining activities in the framework of Quad, and particularly while they expressed that they are very positively think about joining IPEF, which I believe is a economic version or economic chapter within the framework of Quad. So, Mr. Lambert, what do you think would be the reason for this incumbent, Korean administration not so actively participate in the activities of a Quad, while they look for a cooperation in IPEF.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you described the Quad as the pillar of U.S. Asia-Pacific engagement, and I would take exception with that. It is a pillar. Look at what's happened. We're enhancing our engagement with ASEAN. We're enhancing our engagement and encouraging greater trilateral cooperation among Japan, Korea, and the United States. We've got AUKUS. We've got the Quad. We're open to any number of groupings. One of the things that we're trying to emphasize is that there's a complex series of issues out there, and perhaps a grouping that is best focused on dealing with this challenge is not best focused on dealing with that one. The White House has given us great latitude to experiment and to try different groupings. And let's not forget the older groupings too, the G7, the G20. There are many, many things going on. This gets to there's a misperception, I think, that Korea wanted to join the Quad, or Korea should have asked to join the Quad. There's no desire that I've heard of from anyone, either within the Quad or outside the Quad, to join the Quad. There are components of what the Quad is doing that are open for participation and cooperation from any number of countries. And if Korea is interested in doing that, for instance, in the COVID response, they should. I think we perhaps need to do a better job of explaining what the Quad is and it is not. It does not address security issues. It deals with non-security issues. But I think the underlining point you're talking about is suggesting Korea should look at other multilateral mechanisms and be involved more deeply in multilateral things. That's something that I would agree. I think the United States should too. So jointly with Smart Koreans, we're trying to figure out, hey, does a grouping of these countries make sense to address that problem? So we're in a period of let's experiment with different mechanisms. Let's see what works. Do we need to create new ones? Do we need to fold out old ones? But let's do this collaboratively with each other.
네, 감사합니다. 다음은 한미동맹재단 이강덕 이사님께 마이크를 드리겠습니다.
네, 종전선언과 관련해 가지고 질문을 드려보겠습니다. 지금 한국 대선이 이제 20일 조금 더 남았기 때문에 대선 전에 종전선언 이슈가 뭐 어느 측에 의해서 뭐 제기되거나 이러지는 않을 것으로 우리가 이제 생각을 이제 하고 있는데, 그동안 이제 나온 얘기 중에는 한미 양국이 종전선언 문안에 대해서 합의를 했다, 뭐 이런 식의 뭐 일각의 얘기가 있었는데, 그런 의견에 대해서, 그런 입장에 대해서 미국 정부도 동의를 하고 있는지 그게 좀 궁금을 하고요. 미국이나 한국이 북한 쪽에도 그 종전선언 문제와 관련해 가지고 이제 제안이나 뭐 논의를 타진하거나 이미 논의를 했거나 이럴 수 있는데, 미국도 그런 이제 종전선언과 관련된 제안이나 논의를 타진한 적이 있는지, 그리고 북한이 이제 아무런 공식적인 반응이 없는데 북한이 종전선언에 대해서 왜 공개적인 반응을 않는지, 거기에 대한 미국의 뭐 생각이나 이런 게 있는지 좀 설명을 해 주시기 바랍니다.
There was absolutely no, and I've got my interpretation on. Is there a challenge there on that end?
그 통역사님, 그 영어 버튼을 누르셨나요? 다시 한번 그 질문을, 이강덕 이사님 질문을 좀
다시
짧게
듣겠습니다.
해주세요.
이제 종전선언과 관련해 가지고 한미 양국이 종전선언 문안에 동의했다, 뭐 이런 입장이나 주장이 있었는데, 거기에 대해서 미국도 동의를 하시는지, 그리고 이제 한국의 이제 대선이 20일 정도밖에 안 남았기 때문에 그 문제가 이제 다행히 대선 전에는 이제 크게 논란이 되지 않는 상황으로 가고 있다는 생각도 드는데, 그 북한에 대해서 미국도 종전선언과 관련해서 논의를 했거나 타진했거나 이런 적이 있는지, 그리고 북한이 왜 종전선언과 관련해서 침묵을 지키고 반응을 하고 하지 않는지에 대한 미국의 입장이 뭔지 좀 설명 좀 해주십시오.
I don't know. I have no idea what the North Koreans are thinking about. Do you?
한미 양국 간에 그러면 종전선언 문안에 뭐 동의를 했다는 뭐 이런 일각의 주장에 대해서는 미국도 같은 입장인지 그거라도 설명을 좀 해주시죠.
Again, perhaps I wasn't clear. I work on ROK issues. I do not work on DPRK issues. Your question would be better directed towards either Ambassador Sun Kim, Dr. Jung Pak, or South Korean diplomats right now. I don't follow the issues closely enough, and I don't want to misspeak on this.
아니, 이번 하와이 이제 장관회의에 참석하셨는데 그때 이제 뭐 왜 하와이 장관회의 다음에는 한미일 장관회의 다음에는 종전선언 관련된 뭐 발표나 이런 게 없었는지 그런 것도 뭐
You're trying.
좀 하는.
Again, was there something I said that you didn't understand? I'm not going to talk about DPRK issues anymore. I don't work on DPRK issues.
네, 감사합니다. 다음은 우리 강석희 시장님께서 질문을 하시겠습니까?
Thank you,
시간이
but
좀 많이
I
지났는데.
had the same
네.
question, so I withdraw that question.
네, 감사합니다. 오늘 사실은 조금 이제 여러 가지 이유로 늦게 시작을 했습니다만, 우리 마크 램버트 우리 부차관보님께서 굉장히 뭐 아까 테크니컬 이슈에 앞서서 상당히 지금 몸이 안 좋은 상태에서 지금까지 이렇게 계속 질문과 그리고 답변에 응해 주셔서 너무 감사드리고, 건강도 중요할 것 같습니다. 건강을 잘 챙겨가면서 우리 한반도 문제 그리고 한미동맹에 대해서 많은 노력을 해주시기를 바라고요. 여기서 이제 저희들 오늘 제11회 한미동맹 포럼을 마감하려고 합니다. 그래서 마지막으로 우리 램버트 우리 부차관보님께 맺은 말을 조금 부탁드리고요. 그리고 이어서 브룩스 회장님과 그 다음에 정성주 회장님께 맺은 말 폐회사를 요청드리도록 하겠습니다. 마크.
Well, first of all, let me again. Look, I work in a big building where there are people who work on relations with every country on our planet. I am blessed, and it's truly blessed, to have an opportunity to work with colleagues from the Republic of Korea. We don't always agree. You know, we've had disagreements over trade issues or over military posture issues or over any number of things. But at the core, we are allies, we are partners, and we're friends. I appreciate having the chance to have an open exchange. I wish I knew all the answers to things, but I'm extremely grateful for having opportunities like this to promote mutual understanding. Many things have been happening in the last couple of weeks, and many things will be happening in the next few weeks as your country elects a new president and he selects a new cabinet. We're going to need to stay in touch. We're going to need to follow each other's security and diplomatic documents to understand where we're going. But it's opportunities like this where we can candidly share ideas that hopefully help us make wise decisions. I look forward to working with you all again. I read the stuff that you write both individually and in your capacity with various groups. Please keep it up. It does influence our thinking in Washington, and it does shape our alliance. So with that, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
네, 다시 한번 큰 박수 한번 드렸으면 좋겠습니다. 그 다음은 그 빈센트 브룩스 주한미군 전후회 회장님께 매점 말씀을 요청드리겠습니다.
All right, very well. Mark, thank you. That was tremendous. And ladies and gentlemen, we are very, very, very fortunate to be able to get this kind of an insight directly from a serving government official. And I heard many things that I did not know before in terms of the reach and the degree of engagement that has been ongoing. It's better than I thought. And I knew that we were in good shape, but it's even better. This is an important time for the alliance, and even we who are helping to work the alliance need to be thinking bigger about the alliance. I think Mark Lambert has made that very clear, that that's where the governments are oriented at the present time. Even Deputy Assistant Secretary Lambert's title should tell you something, that it's no longer Korea and Japan. It's now much larger. And his reach, as you heard, and also Secretary Blinken's reach, as he touched the countries of the Pacific Island nations and others on his circuit, that expresses a lot about where the US government is currently orienting. That creates a fertile opportunity then for the next Korean government to quickly make contact with the United States and then decide together how they will move. The spirit of our alliance carries into that political and diplomatic effort. The spirit of Kachikachida goes with us. So Mark, thanks once again, and General Shin, thanks for a great conference. 감사합니다.
네, 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 다음은 정승조 한미동맹재단 회장님께 마이크를 드리겠습니다.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Before I begin this session, I had two concerns. First one is your physical condition is not so perfect this morning, but and the second one is some technical issue, as you cannot utilize your computer in your office, but you even though you are not in a good physical condition, you could recover you overcome the technical issue, and you could make this happen. Thank you very much. 신사숙녀 여러분, 오늘 저희는 아주 유익한 그런 강연과 토의를 했다고 생각을 합니다. 우선 램버트 부차관보께서 말씀하시는 도중에 한미동맹에 대한 말씀 이전에 그 인도태평양 사령부 인도태평양 전략 상황에 대한 말씀을 하셨는데, 거기에 얼마나 지금 미국이 인도태평양을 중요하게 생각하는가 하는 것에 대한 여러 가지 말씀을 하셨고, 그다음에 동맹에 대해서는 우리 한미동맹이 여전히 매우 철통 같은 동맹이고, 또 이것이 군사동맹에서 시작했지만 포괄적 동맹으로 발전하고 있고, 또 미국이 한미동맹을 얼마나 중요하게 생각하는지, 그러한 것들이 문 대통령께서 바이든 대통령 취임 이후에 미국을 방문해서 정상회담을 하신 거라든가, 미 고위층들이 한국을 방문했던 그런 사례들을 통해서 잘 설명을 해줬고, 이러한 동맹이 앞으로도 공고하게 유지될 것이고, 미국은 한국의 주권과 독립성을 보장하기 위해서 계속해서 노력을 할 것이라는 그런 입장, 그리고 또 일본과의 협력의 중요성, 이런 것들에 대해서 좋은 말씀이 계셨습니다. 역시 또 연합훈련에 대해서도 말씀을 하셨습니다. 질의응답을 통해서 여러 가지 북한 핵 문제, 한일 관계 개선을 위한 문제, 또 안호영 대사님께서는 양자 관계와 추가해서 다자 협력 관계의 필요성, 그다음에 또 채팅창에서는 우크라이나 관련해서 한일의 어떤 역할에 대한 문제, 또 이세영 장군께서 한미가 군사적 능력을 강화해야 된다라고 하는 말씀, 또 김종훈 대사님께서도 또 이강덕 이사님께서도 여러 가지 좋은 말씀을 해주셨습니다. 오늘 그 토의는 대단히 그 연초에 아주 그 시의적절한 그런 토의였다고 생각을 합니다. 램버트 부차관보님 아무쪼록 신속하게 그 몸 컨디션 잘 회복하시기 바랍니다. 그런 가운데 오늘 이렇게 참여해 주신 점에 대해서 대단히 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 또 오늘 이 그 토의에 이 강연에 참석해 주신 많은 분들 한 분 한 분 제가 이름을 거명하면서 다 감사 말씀을 못 드리지만 이렇게 참여해 주셔서 대단히 감사합니다. 감사합니다. Thank you very much. We go together.
큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 네, 이상으로 모든 포럼을 마치고자 합니다. 오늘 발표와 답변을 해주신 마크 램버트 부차관보님, 그리고 참석해 주신 재단과 전의회의 이사님, 고문님, 자문위원님, 그리고 한미동맹을 사랑하시는 모든 후원 기업 대표님들과 오피니언 리더들께 진심으로 감사드립니다. 이제 3월이면 새로운 대한민국 정부와 그리고 대통령이 선출됩니다. 정치적 변화에 관계없이 더욱 공고한 한미동맹을 유지하는 것이 한미 양국 국민들의 변함없는 바람일 것입니다. 오늘의 이러한 그 포럼이 동맹을 더욱 강화시키는 그러한 하나의 또 계기가 되기를 바랍니다. 다시 한번 우리 마크 램버트 부차관보님께 감사드리고 We go together, 같이 갑시다로 오늘 포럼을 마무리하겠습니다. 네, 감사합니다.